Yes. Yes.
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Right, the first item of business is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee request for sidewalk improvements on Cleveland Avenue, and I will welcome Mallory Jarvie.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, City Council. My name is Mallory Jarvie, and I am here on behalf of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission for the City of Fergus Falls. And we are requesting that one of the bid alternatives for the project PI 5375 includes sidewalks on the east side of North Cleveland with a priority from Beach to Cecil, so finishing up that entire block near Cleveland Elementary, or within the scope of work of the reconstruction project from Beach to Franklin. And this would just be a bid alternative. This is before the design phase. So once it's sent out for design, you would have some alternatives without sidewalks. We're just asking that when you send it out for design to whoever is designing it, one of them thinks about including sidewalks. You're not committing to anything today. You're just allowing yourself to set yourself up for more options when you decide to make that decision in the future. This comes out of the Fergus Falls Safe Routes to School Plan, which was prioritized along with the Master Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan that the City of Fergus Falls created in 2021. This came up through conversations with Cleveland. There's been conversations with the school district to want to complete that sidewalk. It's near a park. It's near a sledding hill. It's near a soccer field. It's en route now to a brand new aquatic center if you're in that neighborhood. So it help create multiple routes for kids to get them so they don't have to walk in the street. They can walk on a sidewalk and be safe. And that is my ask, is that you just consider it when you send it out for bid as an alternative option.
Anybody, any questions of Mallory?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mallory. I appreciate it. You know, when I look at this, I thought, you know, you're right. There's never been a sidewalk there my whole life. It's kind of one of the strangest things I've ever seen. So I want to make sure that we do something to assist you in this process. But what are you looking for there? What do you envision? Is it a sidewalk? Is it more of a path? Is it on the road with lanes for bikes? What do you really see there that you'd like to see?
I would say a 6-foot sidewalk is the standard sidewalk width. I'm not looking for a multi-use trail, which is around 8 to 10 feet. I'm not looking for bike lanes. I'm trying to get kids out of the road and on school property. So this is all on city school property, so you wouldn't have to work with residents. You would have the authority to do this.
Yeah. I just think when it was done originally, you know, the white, I think, is the original school, so that's where everything was. The playground was right there. And now we've expanded out to the east, so that's why I don't think there was a sidewalk there in the first place. When they redid the school, that wasn't like they neglected it. It's just I don't think there was no activities on that. And now, of course, it's definitely needs to be a sidewalk there.
Yes, and we've had discussions with the superintendent and the principal of Cleveland, and they are on board with this. And we've been thinking about this for not many, but a handful of years.
How difficult is, go on. Al.
Just a comment too. I grew up on Cleveland Avenue, more towards Fur Avenue, and I would walk that every day. And I went to Cleveland School, and then to junior high. But that sidewalk, if you're talking about going to the aquatic center or to the we called it the junior high, that nobody ever walked up there. They cut across. I mean, any kid's going to take a shortcut. So it was always you go to the corner of Cleveland and Beach, and you walk kitty corner down to the corner of Northern, and we're kind of where the Armory is there, whatever street that is. Is it Cecil? So that's one thing too. Is nobody stays on the sidewalk.
I mean, sure, if you're able to go off the sidewalk, that's a great option for you.
Right. And, you know, I guess that's one of those things that, you know, I think that as far as accessibility, that's great. It's one thing to think about, too, as far as the kids. And I know usually if there's an accessibility issue, a lot of times, too, that there's buses and rides for that also. I'm not going against it, it's just a comment. And because it's not, people don't walk in these perfect defined areas if they don't have to, or if they can do elsewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a question a little bit more for Brian. Is that street just being done from Franklin all the way up to Fur, or does it come all the way down to Cecil? Or would be going to Cecil with this sidewalk be an added expense in your opinion?
The project limits are from Franklin right now, and if I could just remind the council, 2 years ago, we applied for a state active transportation grant. We were accepted. This was one of those options of the floor. So we rescinded part of the grant and we just used it for the stairwell on there. So the sidewalk can be a standalone, but I would probably, my recommendation is that we apply for a state active transportation grant and to fund this, because we currently don't have a funding source for it. So.
Any other questions of Mallory? Is it possible, Brian, to put it as a bid alternative?
Certainly.
Then we can look at funding and how we would grant it, if we can get a grant for it. So, thank you, Mallory. We will take
Thank
it
you.
from here. The next item on the agenda is the Daily Journal designated publication, and I think Ken Hardy was going to speak to that.
I want to do a motion
Oh.
on that before you want to bring it to council as an alternate.
Would we, somebody like to make that?
I'll offer that motion.
I'll second that.
I'm not sure who seconded, but
Laurel.
Laurel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, motion is approved. Ken?
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, everyone. Morning.
I think the item that got brought up at the council meeting was the qualification of the Daily Journal with the changes that have happened there. And
Correct.
and I think you were going to speak to what changes you've made and the qualification you still have.
Right, okay, so we changed our form, excuse me, we changed our format. I've got it right here. If anybody wants to see it, I brought extra copies to hand out. There's a council story on page 6. Looks like some council people being sworn in.
Good job, Bill.
Bill's gone back to being a newspaper boy.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Well, it was at one time.
Yeah, a lot of people were.
That's what it reminded me of.
His first honest job, that was.
Right.
It does, it reminded me.
Okay, so the first thing you'll see is it's still on newsprint. So it's called a news magazine. Think of New York Post style. And it is stitched and trimmed, so it's a much nicer looking piece. It is 48 pages, so it's what I call a thump factor. You can't just whip through that. And as a pub date of Saturdays, it'll probably hit the streets on Fridays, if not late Thursdays. You know, basically we report news every day, put it up on our web, our social media accounts, and then once a week we collate that news into a print product. So the name does not denote how many times we put out a print publication. So we are the Daily Journal because we produce news daily. And you'll see in your information a letter from Mark Anfinson. He is the attorney for the Minnesota Newspaper Association, and he reviewed all these statutes from 331.A, and he provided a letter that we meet all those qualifications.
Anybody got any questions of Ken?
Well, Ken, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it very much. Appreciate the interactions you and I have had over the years, and appreciate the Daily Journal immensely in our community. And I think one of the things that I want to make sure is that the Daily Journal is hopefully around a long, long time. I think for some of our residents, we get nervous when we see a newspaper go down to 1 day a week, you know, when it used to be 5, 6 days. But I know the market has changed with that. So with that being said, one of the things that I'm hired to do on this council by the citizens of Fergus Falls is to make sure that we're following the rules. make sure that we're doing the right things. And so one of the things that I think is important for us to do is hear from you today, see the newspaper and see what we've got here. So I know I'll have a few questions. One of the questions I have for Andrew and city staff is, do we have anything on file that shows the legal publication for the Daily Journal from a state type regulatory agency other than an attorney with a letter?
We do not.
Okay.
The place that I believe would be the Secretary of State's office that is filed every year, and we would verify that. And then we can do that online, but we don't keep any other files in regards to the status.
With that. Ken, do you have anything else from a regulatory agency, like a state agency, that would say, hey, you're a legal newspaper, other than the Secretary of State, where it states on there, hey, we don't really look into whether you're doing it or not? Do you have anything else to give us?
No, I do not, but I can tell you that as a member of the Minnesota Newspaper Association, we have to follow all those guidelines just to be a member. And absolutely, they are kind of the governing body for the Secretary of State. This gentleman, Mark Affinson, has shaped this policy for the state of Minnesota. I think he's been handling it for over 40 years. If there's a question about it to the Secretary of State, he goes to Mark Affinson, who already wrote this letter.
Yeah. And I appreciated his letter immensely. A couple of things, and I know he's been doing it for a long time, but one of the things that his letter state is, he said his review, my review, he's with the Newspaper Association. One of the things that's difficult for me to go back to the constituents and say is, hey, did this come from a regulatory agency? You know, like myself, when I get a licensure as a doctor of chiropractic, it's regulated. I get a piece of paper. It says, hey, you're qualified. You can treat patients. You can do this. I'm just looking for something that is solid, that is legal, that I can say to the citizens of Fergus Falls, the Daily Journal is qualified to do what we need them to do, and we want to support them, and we want them to be our newspaper for a long time. And that's what I'm really looking for, is something that really hooks in there, that you are that paper. So I don't come around 6 months from now and find out it's different, and then, boy, we really have egg on our face. So all I'm trying to do is do the right thing right away, so we can have a long relationship, Ken, you and I, and the council. One of the things that, and I'll digress just a little bit, is I'm an entrepreneur, but I started thinking about the newspaper, and I realized the first entrepreneurial job I had was a paper boy, and it was with the Daily Journal. And it was a huge responsibility. I was so proud to do it. I was 10 years old, and you've been in the newspaper business longer than I was probably in it 2 years. And the first thing as a paper boy, though, is you sit down, and when your papers show up on the corner, you count every single one of them. You make sure that you have the exact number of papers that you should have every day. And the reason you do that is because when you get to the end of your route, if you're short a paper, that means somebody got two. If you have an extra paper, that means somebody didn't get one. And so I take that to heart now, that all I'm trying to do is make sure I don't have one less paper or I got one extra. I need to make sure we're making the mark with it. Are you aware of, in the statute 331A.02, are you aware of subdivision 4? Have you read subdivision 4 of that statute? And I know we don't have our city attorney here today to be able to help in this matter, which is another issue. But have you read subdivision number 4?
I read through all these initially, and now I'm just rereading this.
So one of the things that caught my attention, if we go all the way back, and we'll talk about subdivision 4, but we go back to subdivision 1, it says right away, no newspaper in this state shall be entitled to any compensation or fee for publishing any public notice unless it is a qualified newspaper. A newspaper that is not qualified must inform a public body, us, that presents a public notice for publication that is not qualified. Now, I'm not saying you're not qualified, but I'm saying the Daily Journal, this is the first time in, I don't know, you know better than I do, but in my whole lifetime that I've heard it called a news magazine, and there's certain criteria that have changed. If we go into subsection 1 and we go down to section C, the thing that changed, and you know it better than I do, is when you were a newspaper that was weekly, you only had to have 25% of your publication to be to local interest. The day in January 1st that this changed to weekly, the statute or the law changed that you now have to have 50% of your local news needs to be in that newspaper, 50%. And so that's a huge change. That's double the amount of local interest to be put in that paper, which I'm sure you can achieve, and you're probably doing it. But at this point, if someone asks me about that and I say, hey, have they met that challenge? I don't know. And I ask city staff, they don't know either. I want to make sure 100% that we are doing the right thing, Ken, and that we can do this for a long time. So when we go to subsection B of the statute or the law, it says, a person that's interested in a newspaper's qualifications under this section may petition the district court in the county in which the newspaper has its known office of issue for a declaratory judgment to determine whether the newspaper is qualified. And the next sentence says, unless filed by the publisher, which is you, Ken, the petition and summons shall be served on the publisher as in other civil actions. So what I'd like to see, and I can't speak for the council, I can only bring up matters on behalf of my constituents. We have two choices, Ken, that I see. One that I would like to see and work with you. Would you be opposed of going to that district court to determine if you are a legal newspaper so we can put this to bed forever and it never gets brought up ever again? Would you be opposed to doing that?
I would be opposed to that. We've met all these statutes, and we always have. We've been a legal newspaper for over 150 years, so no, I'd be opposed to that.
Okay, all right. Then I guess what we'll do is we'll bring it back to the council and see where they're at with interest in it. I would like to know for sure that the new newspaper in our city is meeting the legal newspaper requirements, because it's my job as one of the council members to make sure that we're publishing that in that newspaper. And like I say, the Daily Journal means a lot to me. If we lose the Daily Journal in this city, this is a travesty for us. This is not good. So I want to make sure that we're doing it right. I want to make sure we're supporting you to do it, or with us. So I appreciate your time. Any questions for me, Ken, on anything?
No, just some comments. So, look, Daily Journal's not going anywhere. What we are is in a transition, okay? Most of our readership is online these days. That has been happening for all newspapers. We're in a transition to online. Think back to when there was VHS and CDs came out. I mean, there was a transition. There's always a transition. There's always a disruption in business, right? Well, we have a website that's pushing 800,000 impressions a month. We have a Facebook with 10,000 followers. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are different. This is just one avenue, right? And all these legal notices are also online on our site and on the state's website. We have from basically the authority in Minnesota, Mark Atkinson, stating that we meet all these qualifications. And this is the guy that has crafted that policy. Okay, so we're not going anywhere. There's no fear of that. And if you want to think of it as a weekly, sure. We were twice a week before that. Nobody said anything, right? So in the interest of, being a qualified newspaper, we do meet that.
Answer.
Scott, you had a question?
I'd like to bring the motion to the floor to recommend the council designate the Daily Journal as the city's 2025 legal publication.
Does somebody second that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Scott.
Your Honor, I have a couple of questions.
We have a discussion.
Not necessarily in regards to legal or not legal, just some questions from someone that was an outsider very recently to this process. For people that choose not to pay for the Daily Journal, Is there a way for them, other than going to the state's website, to get beyond the paywall to see the legal notices?
I do not believe the legal notices are behind the paywall.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure of or not. Okay. And then do you ever post links on your Facebook page, like when the legals are published, that these are the legal notices for the week or the month, to draw the attention from those that are on the website?
We do not. They'll come out in print, and then they also go to the website. So
Okay.
they would be considered, kind of like advertising. I mean, we just don't
Okay.
post ads on Facebook
Okay.
either.
Okay, just curious.
Al, you have a question?
I understand about the attorney. As I went through my schooling, I dealt with the same type of an attorney in my business. His name was Richard Grayson. He had Sanborn Grayson in St. Paul. Back in 1973, he was one of the attorneys that helped write the funeral rule, a federal rule for our industry. But what he had was, and the people who had to abide by this, there was licensing and qualifications for this. So there was actually a document that showed that we had to follow this. And we were looked at and scrutinized. And that's what makes it a profession, I believe, in my opinion. Also, too, what troubles me is that we don't have any documentation on anything at the city level. It may have been going on for 140 years. Doesn't mean it's been right or wrong. It needs to be proven now to move forward. And anybody can have an attorney write something. And I'm not belittling this at all, because I know the type of situation that this gentleman here is the top in his game in the industry. I know it was in our industry. But there's also a proof of that these newspapers or funeral homes were up to their game and they were doing the right thing. And we have to prove that every year.
Okay, there is no certificate you get for that.
But there is a district judge that can say it's okay. And that's, I think, where we're at. And I find it a little bit troubling is that you don't want to actually go to that judge and prove it and prove your point. You know, I think that's a wonderful thing when somebody wants to go ahead and say, yes, I will definitely do this so I can prove my point and let's forget about it and move ahead. That's all I think is what Councilmember Mortensen's asking on that.
Okay, we have proved our point, and, the authority on this is the Minnesota Newspaper Association and the Secretary of State. And in conjunction with that, I was referred to Mark Anfinson, the attorney for Minnesota Newspaper Association, who handles all such requests. This is the proof. Okay, there's no certificate you get from M&A that says you're a qualified newspaper. You get listed on the state site, Secretary of State.
I guess my feeling is I would feel a lot better for the people of this city that they knew that it was stamped by a district judge.
So,
It's not required.
Your Honor.
Yep.
I just think that, Councilman Krameyer and Martinson can ask the questions, but the council makes the decision on us. So we vote on it. If we vote, if we vote and it passes,
Yep.
we move on to the next thing. And I don't know, I think you've done everything you possibly could to prove to us. I don't think you need to spend the money to go in front of a judge and get a lawyer and do all that stuff. But if the council asks you to do that, then you'll have to do that. But if the council passes it for the UBR paper, let's move on and do that. And I call for the vote.
Right. Okay, we can bring this to the council meeting on Monday. So all those, we have a resolution. Oh, did you have something, Mark? No.
I have one.
All those
Excuse
in
me.
favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, it'll go to the council on Monday. Okay.
Your Honor, I had one comment.
Okay.
Mr. Harding, it indicates that the acceptance of the filing by the state does not constitute a guarantee by the state that qualifications have been met. And I think this is where we're going. It's important that we understand that there's so many inches of local I've attempted to get onto the State Historical Society and find your past publications, and I've been unsuccessful. And there's one more thing here. The ownership and circulation statement. What's today, back in the old days, it was a piece of paper. How many pieces that you distributed. Today with the internet, is this ownership and circulation statement still of value? How do we know how many people are reading the paper by paper and how
So
many are reading?
That's the statement of ownership, and it's filed every October.
Okay. And how do I get a
Post
copy of that?
office. I don't know, just come see me and I'll find one for you.
I'm sorry?
You can come see me and I'll find one for you.
Okay.
Sure. And it does say that about, the state where, it doesn't guarantee, because any problems or questions that come up are then run through Mark Anfinson, who's the attorney for the Minnesota Newspaper Association. He is essentially the authority on this. Okay?
If you wouldn't mind, just email me the circulation report. It'd be interesting to see that.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Kim.
All right, great, thanks.
Right. The next item on the agenda is Ordinance 64, H Series Shoreline Management. Clara Beck.
Good morning, Your Honor and council members. This is coming to you from the Planning Commission. We have been working with the, do you want to go way down to the bottom of the page? Sorry. And then there's a link. Yeah, hit OK on that map. And then, I'm sorry, can you scroll in on Fergus? Okay, so the city of Fergus Falls has in its zoning ordinance a shoreland management zone, which jives with what the DNR does when it classifies bodies of water within the state of Minnesota. So we have an ordinance that reflects what the DNR has done with their certification process, which is naming things like parts of the Otter Tail River as certain kinds of zones, like a natural zone, et cetera. And that affects what kind of development can occur near that body of water. So one of the state rules in Minnesota is that the city of Fergus Falls, or any municipality that has a zoning code, their code needs to be in substantial compliance with the rules that the state has set for shoreland management. So we started this process a few years ago when it came to light that we just hadn't updated our zoning code in quite a while. So we were behind when we looked at the standards set by the state versus what we had in our zoning code. So the Planning Commission started looking at it, made some updates. I think the last update was done in 2021. And since then, we've had some more discussion with the DNR, and they had some more things that they wanted us to update. So what you have in your packet is updates to our former update. So we are going to adopt those into the code, and then I'm assuming that there's going to continue to be back and forth in the future because we have not fully adopted the state standard. We have continued to simply update our own to make sure that we're matching with the state. So this will be kind of an ongoing process, but these are the changes that the DNR would like to see now. We made updates to open space requirements that they have in the section on PUDs. We did remove 2 basins from our map that the DNR and city have agreed not to classify moving forward, so we just took those off of our list. And we did some corrections to a section reference that was misprinted, and added some design criteria that the DNR was requesting. So that's what our updates are. The Planning Commission has been over this and feels good about what's in front of you. So what is requested of the council is to adopt those changes through an ordinance process.
Anybody have any questions of Clara?
I do.
I read the statute the best I could, and most of the water around Fergus Falls, lakes, and river have been developed. Based on that, is there an out on this, or are we mandated? Because there's not going to be any more homes built on any of these lakes.
There's no out. Nope. This is the set of rules that regulates any kind of development near a body of water.
Overall, at 30,000 feet, what's the intent of the state
The intent of the state, and I assume, is to ensure that shoreland areas are managed well.
Thank you.
Laura?
In section 6B, the 30-foot height max, is that a reduction from like other existing codes that we have, or is that in alignment?
That is in alignment, and 6B was supposed to be removed.
That was supposed to be out of there.
So 6B will not be there on Monday.
Okay.
So, because we regulate the height of structures in the rest of our code, in other places in the code, and it's the 30 feet.
What about section 8, the minimum lot? What were the width requirements before? Are we reducing any options, or?
I am not sure what the old ones were, and if we are reducing them, I'm not sure. We may not have actually even had that in the code initially.
I think that's one of the areas planning, can I speak a little bit to
Yeah,
Planning
please.
Commission? That's one of the areas we struggled with because we know that this is going to cause some people that are already not in compliance to have issues with an addition, a remodel, things like that. And we're not, as a planning commission, we didn't really come, I mean, Clara can speak to this too, to a good solution on that. But that is a concern the planning commission had because we're becoming more restrictive for people that are already non-compliant. Obviously, their existing structure is quote-unquote grandfathered in, would be my understanding. But it is a concern for people that want to make improvements to their home. And we're not exactly sure how to work through that, but that was something we spent time on.
Because the issue is that, as Mr. Layton was kind of alluding to, there's not really an out for us to substantially differ from what the state is requiring. So the language that we are adding in is what the state has suggested as the regulatory rules. What our understanding is that if we do substantially differ from the state, they could step in a situation and override the city rules. I don't know what that looks like in practice, but that is what the DNR has said to us, because we've asked that question of, well, what happens if we do choose to go in a different direction with some of this code? And that was the answer that we got.
Is there a way to send DNR an email saying, you know, it was raised at our committee of the whole meeting, you know, this is a concern, because Laura brings up a really good point, because we spent time on that too. Mm-hmm. What happens if our numbers don't exactly match, or is this set? Is there a way of grandfathering in existing structures, and how do they handle that when they get that question? Because I do agree, like substantially we need to take it, but that doesn't necessarily mean verbatim either.
Right, no. Yeah, that can certainly happen.
I had one more question. Sorry,
Let's
Scott.
go.
Section number 9, the shoreland overlay setbacks, is this being more restrictive to lots?
No, we actually did not change those numbers.
Those haven't changed?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Scott?
It would seem to me that regardless of what we have as an ordinance, whenever a specific project were brought to the Planning Commission and then to the council, we would have the choice to do what we want anyway. True or not, it seems to me that we would have the ability to grant a variance or to grant a conditional use regardless of what the ordinance is. And whether it was this specific or something to do with some other business or zoning question, we've always got that option. So I don't know that we necessarily have to spend any more time on this. That's the way I see it.
Does that variance need to go to the DNR to sign off on?
I believe it does. We have an area hydrologist who does look at development plans. So they would have the opportunity to comment. But again, what the actual outcome of that commenting would be, I'm not sure, because we've never gone through that process of differing substantially.
Any other questions, comments? Are you planning then to, for Monday night, are you going to, if you're going to go back to the DNR, will you get an answer by Thursday for the packet?
I will try. I don't know.
But if not, I mean, do you want to, I mean, what's the time sensitivity on this? Does it have to be done on Monday, or can it wait to the next?
I mean, we've been working on this for a long time. I'm not super worried. I think the DNR would like it to be done.
Right.
But if we have questions, then I think we should get those answered. So.
Yep.
I'd offer a motion to bring it when Claire is comfortable bringing it to the council.
Right. I think we have a. Do we have a motion on the table?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So, Laurel has made a motion. So, if somebody care to second that?
I will.
Thank you, Laura. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Motion is approved. Clara will do her work with the DNR and then bring it back to the council. The next item on the agenda is the letter of intent regarding 522 Hampton Avenue, and I believe that is also Clara.
Indeed it is. Yes, 522 Hampton Avenue
Your Honor.
was.
Sorry, Claire, apologize. Your Honor, I want to make sure that we're doing this in the appropriate session and not in a closed session. Since I've been on the council, which is 4 or 5 meetings, the last piece of property we did in a closed session and not in an open discussion like this. So I just want to get your interpretation, and if our city attorney had been here today, get his interpretation of whether this should be in the public sector yet or a closed session, and what the difference is for us, I guess.
I'm not sure that I know the difference between one or the other than I think the city has the right to go into a closed session. But I think if the buyer or the prospective buyer is happy for it to be an open session, then that's their choice. But maybe Andrew can add some color.
No, you're exactly right. If, if we have the ability to stay open, that's always best for everybody. And in this case, the person who submitted the LOI was comfortable with that. I would suggest to the city council, if there's additional dialogue that needs to happen in terms of a counter offer or some sort of negotiation, I would take advantage of the ability to go into closed session as to not disclose your strategy. But if I think the buyer's anticipating that, having a offer that meets market or the assessed value, the council could just as easily say, yep, we're going to sell it for that and move forward. And that can be accomplished then pretty simply without going into closed session. So a lot of times it's circumstances, if the proposer doesn't want to be in public or doesn't want some of those things to be in public, we'll honor that to the extent that we can.
Yeah.
Then
There's no scenario where an offer that's made to the council can only be made closed. So if we are going to hear something in a letter of intent, we have to at least say, we've received this is the property that we're going to talk about, and then move into closed. So it will always be at least noted that it's happening.
Yeah, and to that end, when we talked about the lot on Tower Road, the agenda disclosed to the public what we were discussing in the closed session, just not the details of, what the future use would be at that point in time, the price, and some of the strategy related to that. So I guess it really is circumstantial or depends on each situation, but it's always best to try to do things in an open session, and our policy related to disposition of city-owned real estates talk about presenting letter of intent in public if possible. So,
Any other questions of Clara? I mean, we can obviously talk through as Andrew said, we can put it on Monday night's agenda to kind of go into a closed session to talk about any strategy or detail.
I look at this from this is a matter between an individual and the community and the city, where they're going to purchase a piece of property, where we're going to sit down and have the ability to discuss price, why, just a lot of things about it. I think we just owe the respect to this individual that it goes to a closed session, that it isn't out in the open about it until the process has been done with him. I would hate to negotiate a deal here with him that is going to be much different than what he's asking for today in front of everybody. So I'm in favor of a closed session just out of respect for the individual and to keep it in coherence with what I've seen on the council before. That's my thoughts, but I'm only one on the council.
You can make a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion that we take this to a closed session. I make that motion.
Would somebody care to
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mark.
So should I introduce this or wait until Monday?
I would say introduce it. And
Okay.
then we can have a closed session on Monday evening.
Great. Yep, Key Property Investments, Andrew Yagi has requested to purchase this parcel from the city. The city acquired it and took down a house that was there that was a blighted property. And Key Property Investments is offering $6,200 for the property. We did look back in records just to see what the city's history was with that property and what the cost was to pull down the home that was there, and it was about $21,000. And we do think that what the offer is from the developer is in line with the tax statements from the county. So it would be up to the council to discuss in a closed session on Monday what direction you'd like to go with this offer, but it's out there in the public now, and I think the developer will be happy to hear.
Thank you, Claire. So we will discuss this Monday night in a closed session, and that's the motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those against, same sign. The motion is approved, so we'll get discussed Monday. The next item on the agenda is an update on the Otter Valley rail signal system replacements, and I think it's going to be a combination of Brian and Grant that will talk us through this.
Yes, good morning, Your Honor and council members. Yes, Grant Cooper from Bolton Mink is here. He's going to do a presentation on Otter Valley Railroad crossing, signal upgrade crossing replacement project. I just wanted to note, just based on comments I heard, it's important for me that the council sees these exhibits first. We are planning a public hearing on January 28th to take public input on this. But in turn, based on comments I've always heard too, these are just exhibits right now. They're initial ideas. So if there's any comments, suggestions, we want to hear from you as well. We are not going out for bids. We're not in final design, but the whole intent is to introduce this where we're at and to take any comments that can be emailed to myself as well, and we'll go through the process. Like I mentioned, comments once we have the conclusion of the public hearing, comments and everything, we'll enter those into final design just to keep, and prior to going out for bids, I'll be requesting authorization to advertise, and at that time, we'll be showing you the final renderings too as well prior to bidding. So just want to stress, this is just for open for comments right now. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Grant Cooper from Bolton and Mink.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, just here to give a quick update on the project. This was initially brought by Brian last May and then again in October, but I'm going to give a little bit of a background for those new members of the council just to get everybody up to speed. So there's 4 Otter Valley rail crossings north of downtown at Summit, Mill, Cascade, and Freiburg that have antiquated systems as determined by the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And so this means they're eligible for federal funding through the MnDOT Section 130 program. So additionally, train speeds at these locations and current railway safety standards require enhancements to these crossing signals. Currently, it's just a flashing beacon. The new safety standards require there to also be a gate arm. So when a train is in proximity to the gate arm, lower than prohibiting traffic from crossing the intersection. With this signal and the gate arm, there'll also be a counterweight on the opposite side of the gate arm. Currently, the city doesn't have additional right-of-way to purchase in these areas, and so there's setback requirements and proximity to sidewalk and the street that need to be met with these signals. And so what we'll walk through in some of these figures is we're looking to potentially bump out curb and create more boulevard, thus providing more space for the signal to operate and maintain some of those standards for the signal. So at Summit, Mill, and Cascade, we're proposing the curb bump outs, or that's what we've kind of come up with right now. As Brian said, we're looking for any feedback that the council may have, and then at the public input meeting. And then at Freiburg, we have it, the available right of way to be able to bump out sidewalk and not have to make any street revisions. The two primary crossings, we're working through preliminary design for all four. The two primary crossings that MnDOT is focused on for 2025 construction is Mill and Cascade. When we go out to bid, I'm anticipating in early April to receive bids. We'll go to bid for all four, and then depending on the funding available, we'll see how many we're able to do. But primarily, we're focusing on the two at Mill and Cascade, potentially Summit and Freiburg if bids come in favorable and the funding is there from MnDOT. From a city perspective, budgetary impact, the city currently has a contract with MnDOT to reimburse the city for our design fees. So that's already in place. Essentially, the city's a pass-through. We'll send our invoice to the city. The city will apply to MnDOT for reimbursement and then get reimbursed for our design fees. So that's already in effect and executed. Additionally, once bids are received for this project, again, the city will enter into negotiations with MnDOT for covering all the applicable construction costs as well. We've had some preliminary conversations with MnDOT, and they've looked at some of our initial preliminary layouts and didn't have any significant concerns with what we're doing so far. From a schedule perspective, like Brian said, January 28th from 5 to 7, we'll have a public input meeting here at City Hall just to take any public comments and make sure that we're taking all residents' concerns and issues into consideration. So we will advertise through Facebook and the city social media platforms, as well as through the Daily Journal for that public input meeting. Again, just under 2 weeks from now. And then some other key milestones I'm anticipating coming to council mid-March for approval of plans and specifications and advertising for bid. And then in early April, having a bid opening and then construction happening in 2025 for Mill and Cascade, and potentially others. We'll just see how bid prices come in. Completion date prior to winter of 2025. So the construction would take place this coming summer. As you can see up on the screen here, Summit Avenue, just our preliminary kind of layout is essentially just narrowing the street, and that'll allow for additional space for the gate arms. And that's essentially just creating some more boulevard, additional grass and turf for the boulevard there. You can see there too, that's an example of what we're anticipating the gate arm to look like. You can see there's that counterweight on the back side, but that gate arm will lower when trains are in proximity. You want to go to the next one, Lynn? So Mill Street is the next, very similar, where we're just narrowing the roadway. Actually, the curb on the north and south side don't exactly align, so through this we'll be able to align it a little bit better compared to what is existing right now. And I have a couple leaders there as well, kind of pointing to where the approximate location of the signal arms will be. You can go to the next one. Cavour is actually, or I should say Cascade, has the most nuance to it from a design perspective. When we've had conversations with MnDOT, if you were traveling westbound on Cavour and you intersect Cascade, you can see the white line on the north side of the tracks is where the signal gate arm would be. You would already be past that gate arm if it was down. And so MnDOT sees that as a safety concern. And so when we've been talking with them, we've come to a conclusion and seeking, again, public input, but we're anticipating is to make that a right in, right out intersection, thus prohibiting a left-hand turn onto South Cascade Street. Again, prohibiting people from being able to bypass that signal arm if it were down. And so that's the one nuance there. We'd still maintain the pedestrian or the bike facility on street there. And so again, just kind of curb bump outs there with that traffic island to do a right in, right out at that intersection. And then the last figure is Freiburg, pretty simple there. We're just bumping out, we're able to bump out some sidewalk and make some tweaks there to allow for that new gate arm system to be installed. Specifically at Cavour, I've reached out to a couple, specifically at a daycare that's directly adjacent there and chatted with them individually. They were actually pretty excited about this because they think it might slow down some traffic in that area. Their biggest concern was their pickup and drop off zone just outside on the directly west, and we will not be impacting that. And so they, in my conversation with them, they didn't have any significant concerns. But again, we're gonna have a full public input meeting here in a couple weeks where we'll seek additional comment from residents as well. With that, open it up to any comments from council here.
Any questions of Grant?
I
Scott? Oh, Scott, go.
This may involve Brian as well as Grant, but a couple of questions. We had, early on when this was first suggested, I asked about whether in the course of doing whatever we do, if we could also include the possibility of this becoming a no-horn zone, such as they have in Detroit Lakes, Moorhead, other places. And I think that would be a real advantage for us, particularly in this stretch downtown. And how that impacts whatever might be built or not built, it's maybe a completely different question, but it just seems related. You know, if we're going to do this, that we ought to be able to qualify for a no horn zone in some way, if we're going to do it. The other question I would have is there some penalty or is there some something that would happen if we don't do anything? I mean, they're recommending this and they're saying this is what the rules are and all that, but if we don't do anything, then what? Are we under some penalty? Are we under some what happens? I don't know. That's the question.
If Brian kind of had the initial conversation with Mendel.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, they're the regulating agency, and you think about it this way, it's not our right-of-way, it's the railroad's right-of-way on it, and we've had those discussions, very good questions, but essentially it will happen, but if the city wants to maintain with longer mast arms and counterweights, it's going to be at our expense. And so something to consider. Ultimately, I guess if we really wanted to oppose it and everything, we could be subject to some road closures too as well. So just based on the conversation I had, so.
I would like to echo the no horn situation that Scott raised. That was one of my questions in regards not only to these crossings, but if we have others that have been updated recently, that we could look at that as well. Second of all, do you have an estimate on each of these projects or proposed drawings of how many on-street parking spots would be reduced in each of these scenarios, so we know those correlations?
I'll confirm that. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I'll confirm that, or I'll look into it.
Okay, and then my other comment would be, especially on the one in regards to downtown, that has the most to do with downtown business on Cavour and Cascade. When we go to public hearing on that, I think it would be beneficial to reach out to the chamber and have them send notice out to the businesses that they have contact with to make sure our businesses are all aware. And thank you for reaching out to the daycare.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? If not, would somebody care to make a motion to bring this to the council?
I got one more question. If we go forward and start asking for a no horn zone, who's liable for that? Is that going to be the railroad, or is it going to come back to the city to with that?
So what I'm anticipating potentially, I can ask that question of the MnDOT. I'm anticipating if it's a no horn zone, there'll be additional enhancements to the signals that will need to take place. So I don't know if you've been in downtown Fargo, they have gate arms on both sides of this would be a gate arm on just the vehicular traffic, so on the northbound lane and just be on the right side, not on the left side. But it'd be gate arms on both sides and then gate arms on sidewalks as well. Additionally, it may include even fence along the rail itself. So I will have to confirm that, but it would be additional city expenses. I think the key piece there that MnDOT in our conversations and Brian's conversations wouldn't be willing to participate in.
Yeah.
From a liability standpoint, I'm not sure to answer that question right now.
Well, I appreciate the answer you gave, because when I look at it and I see things around Fargo Moorhead and some of those exact things you're talking about are there. From a city standpoint, I don't want us to be liable for no horn and someone gets hit with a train.
I mean, from my understanding, that one will be difficult to pass. That the railroad has kind of federal regulation rules that they have to follow, and certainly it's any of the manned crossings, they're going to blow the horn regardless. So it would possibly maybe take 1 or 2 out, but it won't take. You're going to hear a train coming in, you're going to hear a train going out, because they're mandated to blow the horn, and unfortunately there's a lot of people that don't make it across the tracks, and the engineers on those trains have to live with that. So, and that's a tough thing for them to live with. So,
Your Honor, thank you. On the Cavour and Cascade, where you've got only a one-way turn, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what an arm costs, but could there not be an arm set there on Cavour that would stop traffic? You would still have north and south traffic?
That's a potential, I believe. Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but would MnDOT look at that and say that'd be a city expense? Or we can talk to MnDOT about that.
You can ask him. I think its biggest thing is this going to be, we might have to do some modification. Once again, it's just that counterweight and clearances from pedestrian.
Yeah. Well, you're already building that little curb there, so that would be where the place where it would be. And do we have traffic counts on these intersections?
Yeah, there are posted on the state website. They have traffic counts on these.
I would like to know where to get that, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay.
I think.
It's just an update. I don't think we need a motion.
Right.
Yeah, it's just simply an
So,
update.
okay, so we'll just bring an update. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
The next item is again Brian on the Trunk Highway 210 West and I-94 bridge replacement and interchange.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, or good morning again. Yes, just to give you a background, the resolution before you is in regards to MnDOT's Trunk Highway 210 I-94 interchange project. Limits extends from west of Redwood Lane to Western Avenue within the city of Fergus Falls. In the high level, it consists of a single bridge replacement to replace 2 existing bridges over I-94, in addition to 3 roundabouts constructed on both the I-94 on and off ramps and at the Redwood Lane intersection. So on exhibit before you right here is a proposed roundabout geometric design for Redwood Lane, which is currently a signalized intersection, converting it to a roundabout. So during final design, it's apparent that multiple private and public utilities are going to be impacted through this design. Based on, from city's behalf, in 1993, we constructed both a 10-inch sanitary sewer and a 10-inch water main crossing Trunk Highway 210 from the north to the south, which is Mabel Murphy's. This is a service to Mabel Murphy's and future development in this area. These are both cased within steel casings. However, based on MnDOT's design, we're having some bury issues, primarily on the south side of Trunk Highway 210, that will basically expose both the sanitary and sewer to potential freezing. So because of this, I procured a professional services agreement with Interstate Engineering to do some preliminary design. I also coordinated a reimbursement agreement with MnDOT. I don't know the extent of the relocation. We're going to try to maintain a gravity sewer condition that's currently serving Mabel Murphy's. But to maintain that type of conveyance system, we're really going to have to look at how far we can go to maintain the service and the adjacent lift station as well. So there's going to be a little bit of work that we need to accomplish and everything, but it's going to be all coordinated with MnDOT. So But like I mentioned, this happens to be an I-94 right away. It is a unique area based on my conversations with MnDOT. Because of this, there are some federal funds to reimburse the city for these utility relocation expenses. I've attached the agreement in your packet for your review. So, as I mentioned, the utility cost implications are currently unknown. The intent is to secure reimbursement for construction from the state through an amendment to this agreement. However, that's yet to be determined. So, construction on MnDOT's project is tentatively scheduled for 2026. In regards to these utility relocations, we still need to resolve that with MnDOT. I would likely prefer 2025. However, those are conversations we still need to have. So at this time, I'm requesting a resolution accepting MnDOT Agreement 1058434 for the Trunk Highway 210 reconstruction project. So I'll open up to any questions you may have.
I'll offer that, Your Honor.
I'll
Thank
second
you.
that.
Thank you, Lori. Any questions?
Yeah, Brian, I appreciate it. Somewhere in the packet, it showed a $750,000 cost to the city, but is that reimbursed back from the state, did you say?
Oh, those are so of this 16, $17 million, this estimate's probably dated. I don't have a recent one from MnDOT for the total project cost. The city share is about $700,000 to $750,000. That's associated with our two legs of Redwood Lane interchange and also some work at the east end near Western Avenue, all of which is in the city limits. So those costs, plus we're working on lighting agreements as well. We got two boundaries between Otter Tail Power, Lake Region Health. I don't have what those cost implications could be to the city yet, so this is just estimates right now. However, with that amount, we're proposing municipal state aid construction to fund the city's portion, so it's not locally levy funded,
Okay.
but to be determined as it progresses.
Okay, I appreciate it. The other thing, this is a pretty big project for our city, pretty big project for the adjacent businesses, especially Mabel Murphy's. Do you have an idea of how long Mabel Murphy's will be out of commission, or will they not be out of commission, or how will it work?
MnDOT's going to be the lead agency on this project, but all implications it's a large project. We're going to maintain access to the best extent practical. Note, a majority of this work here aligns with westbound Trunk Highway 210. Southbound 210 is going to be used as the interim detour route for advancing traffic while construction is occurring on the north side. Similarly, Walmart's and everything, there is staged temporary access roads on the northwest side of the proposed roundabout there to maintain those access points to for good operations during construction. It's all being discussed. It will be, as I mentioned, I would prefer if we can, with these utilities, maybe in 2025, so we're out of the way. Because on this map is not shown, there's a lot more lines showing private utilities. This is just modified to show city utilities. So there's going to be a lot of coordination, a lot of work during this process.
Appreciate that.
All those in favor of the resolution to bring to the council, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, the resolution is approved. The next item is again Brian on the sale for the landfill.
Yes, thank you. Just a little recap. The city of Fergus Falls owns and operates a Class 1 demolition disposal site, which is referred to as 3A. This is our current active site at the Fergus Falls landfill. It's expected to reach capacity in 2025. Last March, the City Council initiated the plans and specs for Cell 3B. Houston Engineering has substantially completed these project plans and specifications. The estimated construction cost is $678,000. Because of this, we must publicly advertise for bids. Currently, the MPCA's Solid Waste Division is completing their review. They are the regulating agency. Upon their review, we'll finalize the plans, incorporate any comments, and set the final bid date. But we're tentatively scheduled the bid date for landfill 3A for February 25th. But I just want to note that's subject to change. Budgetary impact, as initially estimated, the total project, construction cost was about $925,000. Through design and potential cost-saving measures were identified. So we're estimating the construction cost once again at $678,000. I want to stress, once we get actual bids, the bids prices will be taken into account, and Total project budget will be presented to the council, and it will also be, the refuse rates as noted in here. We're going to look at those too as well to see what the impacts are. Obviously, there's going to be some increases in the rates, but we're hoping with actual construction costs that we can slow that trend line as well. So we were estimating at the time about $30.40 per cubic yard in 2023, and it could be in 2033 based on projections up to $51, give or take. However, we'll be looking at those numbers once we get actual costs. So at this time, I'll open up to any questions you have. What I'm requesting is to accept the project plans and specifications and authorization to advertise for bids for demolition landfill phase 3B construction.
Thank you, Brian. Very nice. I was on the Otter Tail County's Solid Waste Committee for a few years. I don't think we have an option, do we? The state mandates this solid waste, and we're kind of dictated to what to do.
They are the regular, what we propose. It's a whole larger conversation about the MPC and their regionalization. But once again, we still generate waste. Where it goes is what's the most difficult part that nobody can answer, let alone the associated rates as well. So
Yeah. And the city own this or the county own this?
this is a city-owned.
Okay. Again, I don't think Fergus Falls can beat the state of Minnesota and Minnesota pollution control on this solid waste. Those are pretty well mandated.
It is, we are the first of our kind with the class 1, even though it's built to class 2 standards as being aligned and everything like that. We are exploring grants, and I would have to envision the cost implications to our residents and everything, looking at our rates. We're going to have to probably start speaking to our legislators as well to get some funding assistance and everything like that. But there was an advertisement for a potential grant for landfills and everything that we'll probably be looking at. But yes, any assistance from the state would be helpful. Let alone there's many throughout the state that are starting to close down too. So what the solution to the problem is, I don't know yet.
Well, I'm a proponent of, like they have in, is it the incinerators at Perm? And we used to have one here. I'm a proponent of that. It seems like the solid waste costs just continue to soar, and the mandated ordinances are difficult to maintain at a city level. May I regress, back up one to the 210 I-94 roundabout. Is there a stop to that?
Essentially, we can bring comments and concerns, but to answer your question, a few years ago, we did pass a resolution, municipal consent to the project. So I guess we'd really have to rescind that resolution and provide it to MnDOT, but I think we're also going to be subject to some costs incurred too, being states incurred so many costs with this project, so.
It would be interesting to find out what those costs are, what it would take to, rescind that ordinance. Again, I'm not a believer in roundabouts, especially when you're just coming right off the freeway. I'm honored to see Commissioner Sullivan in here, so maybe he could take a light of this as well. Thank you.
In the interest of time, can we move on, Mark?
Yep, thank you.
So-
I provide one comment to that. I don't know if I could have an answer to you by Monday.
Oh,
So-
I'm good.
Okay.
Wait,
I'll offer
Right.
a motion to
Thank
go
you,
ahead on the
Scott.
landfill demolition.
do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. So, any other comments regarding the demo cell?
Just one quick comment, Your Honor. That cell, we don't receive any funds for anything from the county on our demo cell that we have in the city, right?
No.
None. Is that demo cell restricted to city residents only, or can county residents come in, pay a fee, and use that demo cell?
I believe for out of state, I don't do operations, but for out of city limits, there is an increased fee for
But-
tipping fee for it.
Yeah, they can still use that cell. Yep,
Correct.
thanks.
Anyway, we have obviously a motion regarding accepting the plans and specifications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign.
Thank you.
Hearing none. The motion is approved. And there were no additional agenda items. Just quickly, obviously Monday is Martin Luther King Day, so your garbage and recycling that should have been picked up on Monday will be picked up Tuesday, and likewise Tuesday will be picked up Wednesday, and the city council meeting will be on Tuesday versus Monday, 5:30. That's about it. With that,
And then,
we
yeah, just
retreat.
real quickly to note, the next thing on the announcements there, this council retreat, that is no longer the date. It'll be February 7th. So this was put out and printed prior to moving that
Right.
retreat date. Just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned.